Don't be weird, Weldon. That's the only thing she whispered to me before clinking her glass against mine and walking straight into the middle of the rooftop like I was just the valet who brought her up here. I watched her orange dress shift like a fire I couldn't control, dangerous, bright, and oddly mesmerizing. She floated through our group of friends like none of them knew what she'd just said to me in the elevator 2 minutes earlier when I had tried, stupidly, to hold her hand. Her fingers peeled mine off like gum stuck to her shoe. And now here she was, spinning stories at someone else's table, throwing her head back with a laugh I hadn't heard in months. Everyone loved Elora when she was lit up like this. She had a glow that made people forget there was a fuse burning at the bottom. Then it happened. She pointed at me. Loudly. Clearly. Right after Vaughn made a joke about men who can't keep up. That's him, she said, without hesitation. My sweet husband. He brings books to beaches and asks waiters about their dreams. Laughter. I stood there, holding a full glass I hadn't touched, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't trust myself to hold it without shaking. I mean, don't get me wrong, she added, eyes sparkling under the string lights, he's very safe. Like socks on Christmas morning. Someone called out, hey, I love socks. She doubled down. But you wouldn't marry socks if you wanted fireworks. More laughter. Too much of it. The kind that spills over from discomfort into cruelty, and no one bothers to stop it. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe properly. I just stared at the way she smiled through the punchline, like she'd rehearsed it. Like I was the payoff to a joke she'd been preparing for weeks. And when I finally turned to leave, she didn't call my name. She let me go. Let me push through the rooftop door and back into the dark stairwell with nothing but the low sound of music echoing behind me. I was almost to the sidewalk when my phone buzzed. Her name. One message. Are you okay? You know I love you. I stared at the words like they came from someone else entirely. Because whatever that was back there, whatever that version of Elora was, if that's what love looks like, I'm not sure I want to be on the receiving end of it anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, but because every time I closed my eyes, I could hear the way her friends laughed. Not politely, not awkwardly, but freely, like I was never really one of them. Like I was the shadow following Elora into parties, dinners, weddings, never quite earning a seat at the real table. I sat on the edge of our bed, still in the same shirt, the same creased pants, staring at the door as if she'd walk in any moment and say, I'm sorry. She didn't. Around 2:15 a.m., the apartment door opened. Keys jingled. Her heels clicked down the hallway. And then silence. She knew I was awake. I was sure she saw the light from the bedroom. But instead of coming in, she went to the kitchen. I heard the fridge open. Then the quiet fizz of soda. And still, not a word. I waited. Waited for an apology. A joke. Even a passive, half-hearted excuse like, I was just playing around. Don't be so sensitive. I'd have taken anything. But she walked into the bedroom, placed her phone on the nightstand like she was alone, and slipped under the covers without meeting my eyes. You didn't answer my message, she said flatly, facing the ceiling. I swallowed hard. Because I didn't know what part you wanted me to respond to, the mockery or the love part. She didn't flinch. Just pulled the blanket up to her shoulders and muttered, you always read too much into things. It was a party, Weldon. A party where I was the entertainment. Now she turned her head. Her face was calm. Blank, almost. You're being dramatic. That word. Dramatic. Like I was just acting out some scene for attention. I stared at her like I didn't know this person anymore. You called me socks, Elora. I said you were like socks. Warm. Familiar. And boring. She sighed. You're twisting my words. No. You said it. You said fireworks. You said safety was dull. You said it all in front of a room full of people who didn't even know my name. She didn't argue. She didn't deny it. She just blinked slowly and whispered, I was drunk. I wasn't. My voice cracked. And I heard every word. That silence again. Thick enough to drown in. I could almost hear her thinking, choosing not to pick a fight, not to dig deeper. That was always her trick. Let things rot slowly instead of burning them down. She thought silence was kindness. I got up and walked out of the bedroom. I didn't take anything. Just grabbed my hoodie and left. No destination, just out. Out of that room, out of her orbit. I walked aimlessly, past the 24-hour gas station, past the shuttered bakery we used to love, past the apartment complex with the fountains that always reminded her of Italy. I ended up at the park bench 2 blocks from her office. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was the place I once brought her coffee on her first day at the agency. I had written her a note, Something stupid, heartfelt, hopeful. That girl is gone. At around 5 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Another message from her. Come home. It's too early to be mad. Please. That word, please. It looked wrong coming from her. Like she typed it without believing it. I didn't respond. I just sat there on that bench, watching the sky try to turn orange over a city that didn't care about men like me. Men who sat silent while their partners turned them into punchlines. Men who nodded through it, hoping kindness would be enough. But I was starting to wonder, when someone keeps making you feel like less, do they still get to say they love you? Because if that was love, I had no idea why it felt so lonely. The thing about emotional damage is that it rarely arrives with a warning. It creeps in disguised as politeness, as just jokes, as subtle corrections that slowly shave off pieces of you until you forget what you looked like before. That weekend after the rooftop party, I realized I couldn't even remember the last time Alora had said something kind about me in public. But I remembered all the other things. The snide remarks, the deflections, the hollow praise. By Saturday morning, she was acting like nothing happened. Pancakes on the stove, jazz playing low in the background. She even wore the hoodie she used to steal from my side of the closet, the one with the bleach stain near the elbow. I walked into the kitchen half expecting her to confront what happened. Instead, she greeted me with a smile so easy, so casual, it made me question my own memory. Morning, she said. Coffee. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She slid a mug toward me without meeting my eyes. There was no apology in her movements, just a weird kind of manufactured peace. So, I was thinking, she said between bites of her pancake, we should stop by my sister's place this afternoon. She's making those weird kale chips you hate. I blinked. You want me to go hang out with your sister after Thursday night? She paused mid-chew. Well then, I already told you. Vaughn's party was stupid. Everyone was a little buzzed. I barely remember half of what I said. You remembered enough to joke about it with Carla on the phone yesterday, I said flatly. Her jaw tightened, just for a second. Were you eavesdropping? You were on speaker. You put your phone down on the table. I was literally 5 feet away. She didn't respond to that. Just picked up her mug, sipped, and gave me that look. Half pity, half boredom. That was becoming her signature expression lately. I don't want to fight, she said finally. Then talk. I am talking. No, I said, pushing my plate away. You're acting. You're pretending that Thursday night didn't happen. That your little performance up there wasn't deliberate. But I saw you. You were proud of it. Like you'd finally figured out how to put me in my place while making it look like a joke. She sighed and leaned back in her chair. You always do this. You turn one awkward moment into a thesis on how I'm secretly out to destroy you. No, I said quietly. You're not out to destroy me. But you're no longer interested in protecting me, either. Her face went blank. That was the real betrayal. Not the party, not even the insults, but the casual disregard. The way she left me exposed, humiliated, and didn't flinch. She used to shield me from the world, even when we fought. Now, she offered me up for sport. I had become her safe insult. Her emotional punching bag in a room full of people who only knew her side. But I went with her to her sister's anyway. Because that's what I always did. I followed, hoping she'd change. Hoping that maybe I'd matter again. That if I just stayed loyal enough, still enough, useful enough, she'd come back. At her sister's house, I saw it again, her charm. Effortless. Blazing. She lit up the room, and I stood in her orbit like a half-lit lamp, flickering under dim expectations. I watched her tell stories about me, again with that patronizing edge, again with those sideways glances that asked for permission to laugh at the man beside her. No one defended me. Not even me. And then, as we left and I was helping her into her coat, she looked up and said, Thank you for being good today. Good. Like a dog who didn't bark when the doorbell rang. Later that night, when we got home, I sat in my car an extra 15 minutes before going inside. I stared at the rearview mirror, watching my own face twist between confusion, shame, and grief. I didn't recognize the man looking back. That's when the third message came through. You're always so quiet lately. You used to fight for me. What happened to that Weldon? I didn't respond. Because the truth was, that Weldon died the moment she turned me into entertainment. And I wasn't sure who replaced him. Just that he was starting to get angry, not loud, not aggressive, but the quiet kind of angry. The dangerous kind. The kind that watches. Learns. Waits. I've started noticing it everywhere now, the shift. How Alora speaks about me in groups, even small ones. At brunch with her coworker Lainey, she described me as the type of guy who still uses a bookmark. Lainey laughed. I laughed too, but not because it was funny, because I didn't want to be the guy who kills the mood. Again, at the grocery store, when the cashier asked if we needed a bag, Alora said, "Oh, no, he folds everything like a retiree on a cruise ship. He'll make it work." I smiled. She chuckled. The cashier looked confused. She doesn't lie. That's the tricky part. What she says is always technically true, but it's dressed up in that sly tone, those half glances that say, "See what I put up with?" And people laugh, thinking we're just that kind of couple, sarcastic, playful, charming. What they don't see is that I've become a character, an accessory to her performance. The part that stings the most is that I didn't notice when it began. I don't remember the first time she used me for a laugh or how long I've been saying it's okay afterward. Maybe it started when I left my teaching job to freelance from home. Maybe when I began offering to cook more, thinking it would help us feel more like a team. Maybe when I started letting small insults slide, just to keep the peace. Or maybe it's always been this way, and I only recently woke up to it. Monday morning, I caught her on the phone in the kitchen. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was grabbing my laptop from the counter when I heard her say my name. No, he doesn't know. Weldon isn't exactly tuned in like that. I froze. She laughed. Yeah, he's just comfortable, predictable, sweet, but dull. It's like trying to light a fire with damp matches. Silence on the other end. Then, don't tempt me, she said, her voice lowered and flirtatious. I quietly backed out of the room before she saw me. My laptop stayed right where it was. I spent the next 2 hours sitting in my car in the garage, not listening to music, not scrolling my phone. Just breathing, thinking, trying to convince myself that maybe she was talking about something else. Maybe I misheard. Maybe I'm paranoid. But the gut doesn't lie. It whispers things you don't want to hear. Things you've been avoiding because naming them would make them real. And my gut? It was screaming. That night, I watched her sleep. Her face soft, her breathing even, like she hadn't dragged me across coals with her words just 12 hours earlier. And I wondered how a person can be so casual about destruction. How she could go from making pancakes to making me question my reality in the same breath. I didn't confront her. Not then. Because deep down, I wasn't ready to hear the confirmation. I wasn't ready to be told I'd been replaced, not by another man necessarily, but by the version of myself she wished I was. Someone bolder, louder, sharper. Someone with harder edges and fewer hesitations. Someone who didn't ask before touching, who didn't pause mid-sentence to choose the gentle word. Someone who didn't fold grocery bags into little triangles and leave notes in lunchboxes just because. The next morning, she kissed my cheek and said, "You're sweet, Weldon." I don't tell you that enough. I nodded and poured her coffee like always. Because even when someone's cutting you slowly, it still takes time before you bleed enough to walk away. But something had shifted inside me. I could feel it. A stillness that wasn't peace, but detachment. Like a glass pane had slid into place between us, and I was now watching my own marriage from behind it. Observing. Archiving. She thought I was quiet because I was hurt, but I was quiet because I was collecting proof. And part of me already knew I would need it. Tuesday evening, she came home humming. It was a sound I used to love. Back when we lived in the little apartment on Briar Street, and she would hum through the hall after yoga class, arms full of groceries, her voice soft and unguarded. Back then, her happiness had felt like something we shared, something we built together. But now, that same hum felt like someone else's music playing in my home. Something out of place. A laugh track over a horror film. She dropped her bag on the couch and tossed her heels beside the ottoman like a teenager in a rush. Her lipstick was a shade I hadn't seen her wear in months. Her blouse had a new tag still attached at the seam. And the way she moved? Light. Too light. Like gravity forgot to claim her. I asked, carefully, where she'd been. "Happy hour," she said, slipping off her watch. "Just a few of us from work. Carla, Vaughn, Lainey." The way she said Vaughn's name, it didn't stick out in volume, but in smoothness. As if she'd practiced it for casual delivery. I didn't ask anything more. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I was suspicious. Not yet. Later that night, she showered, dried her hair, and scrolled through her phone with the quiet smile of someone replaying a highlight reel. Meanwhile, I sat at the desk in our bedroom with a blank document open on my laptop. But I wasn't writing. I was watching her reflection in the screen, trying to read her face like a map to a place I no longer had the key to. I did something I'm not proud of. I picked up her phone after she fell asleep. I've never been that person. The snoop. The man who betrays trust in the name of finding the truth. But I'd already been betrayed. I just didn't know how deeply. There wasn't much in her messages. Nothing explicit. Just patterns. Vaughn's name was everywhere. Sent memes. Inside jokes. Photos from meetings I hadn't heard about. A message from him that read, "Can't believe how easy you make it to breathe on days like today." She replied with a winking emoji. No words. Just a symbol. But it was enough. I felt the skin behind my ears burn. I didn't take screenshots. I didn't forward them to myself. I didn't need to. I knew if I saved them, it meant I was admitting defeat. That I would eventually use them. I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The next day, she asked if I'd seen the news about some celebrity divorce. I said no. She laughed and said, "Guess not all love lasts forever." That hit like a knife twisted slow. So I asked her, finally, "Do you think ours will?" She blinked, caught off guard. Ours what? Last. She looked away, straightened the cushions on the couch. "You're asking weird questions lately. I just want to know if you still believe in us." She didn't answer. Instead, she said, "You're always in your head, Weldon. You need to learn to live in the now." I didn't have the heart to tell her that the now was where all the damage was happening. That weekend, she told me she was attending a strategy retreat. 2 nights at a hotel outside the city. Work-sponsored. No plus ones, she added with a smile, before I even had the chance to ask. And when she packed, she hummed again. Light, casual, heartless. She kissed my cheek like I was her brother and said, "Don't wait up on Sunday. We'll probably get back late." After she left, I stood in the hallway for a long time, the smell of her perfume lingering like the final scene of a bad play. I went into our bedroom, opened her drawer, pulled out the second phone I found there last winter. The one she said was just an old backup. I had kept it hidden in the linen closet since then, just in case. And I turned it on. What I found confirmed what my gut had screamed. I wasn't just a background character in her life. I was the lie that made her feel safe while she lived another story behind closed doors. And now that I knew, I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to prepare. Because if she wanted to play in secret, she was about to learn that I could be quiet too. But not forever. The burner phone was slow to power on. The screen cracked, battery barely holding charge, and the interface clunky like a device from another time, but it worked. It worked well enough to show me what she never meant for me to see. I didn't even need a passcode. That was the most surprising part. Either she forgot, or she was arrogant enough to think I'd never think to check it. That's the thing about people who lie often. They stop believing anyone else can be clever, too. At first, the inbox was empty. The kind of emptiness that screams recently cleaned. But in the Photos app, I found a folder labeled Mockups, which didn't seem suspicious until I opened it. There weren't design samples or brand drafts. There were screenshots of chats, real ones, exported from somewhere else. Threads between her and someone listed as V, all timestamped, all threaded in that unmistakable language of intimacy masquerading as casualness. V, how does he still not notice? He's either the most trusting man alive or Elora, or he's just comfortable being ignored. He's used to staying out of the way. V, you deserve more. I wish you didn't have to go back there tonight. Elora, I don't mind pretending. It's just part of the story. That last line. It's just part of the story. It kept echoing in my skull like an accusation. Like I was a prop in a theater I didn't audition for. The worst part? I couldn't even tell how long this had been going on. It felt old. Worn in. Like a routine. A habit. I went cold. Not furious. Not shaking. Just still. Because something inside me finally snapped, but not in the way you'd expect. I didn't want to scream or throw things or even demand an explanation. What I wanted was clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't need noise. I started going back, mentally replaying every joke she made about me in public, every eye roll, every time she called me safe, sweet, soothing, all words she used like restraints, not compliments. She never wanted warmth. She wanted friction. Fire. Something that burned. I was not fire. I was the fireplace she walked past. When she returned from the retreat on Sunday night, she looked too happy. Her hair slightly windblown. Her smile involuntary. Her phone buzzing 3 times before she even took off her coat. She didn't mention the trip much, just that it was productive, and the team bonded well. I told her I made soup while she was gone. She smiled, almost condescendingly. You and your soup. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for her to unravel this. I wasn't going to chase answers she clearly had no intention of giving. Instead, I started quietly packing pieces of my life into my own digital corners. Bank accounts, important documents, photos I wanted to keep, notes she didn't know I had saved, love letters from the early days, now hollow echoes of someone else's handwriting. Monday morning, she was already out of bed before I even opened my eyes. I found a note on the fridge, scribbled fast, "Want a coffee with Lainey. Be back later." I didn't believe it, so I followed her. I never thought I'd be the kind of man who tailed his wife through traffic, paranoid and silent. But there I was, 10 car lengths behind her Corolla, watching her take a sharp turn away from the usual cafe. She wasn't meeting Lainey. She met him, Vaughn. They sat at a window booth. She leaned in, touched his hand, threw her head back at something he said. Her body language betrayed everything she denied. It wasn't a one-time mistake. This was practiced, lived in, familiar. She ordered for him like she'd done it 100 times. I sat across the street in my car, staring at the two of them through the windshield like they were part of some exhibit called "The Woman You Thought Loved You." And then she did something that hit me harder than anything else. She smiled. But not just any smile. It was my smile. The one I thought only I got. The one she used on me in our first apartment when I told her I loved her through tears. That crooked, knowing, half-shy smile she reserved for moments where words failed. I saw her give it to him. That was the moment I knew we weren't just broken. We were already gone. I watched them for 37 minutes. Every second was a slow knife dragging across the skin of my memory. I kept count because it gave me something to do with my shaking hands. At minute 17, he reached across the table and brushed a crumb off her cheek. She laughed and swatted his hand, the way she used to do with me during Sunday breakfast when we sat cross-legged on the floor, eating off paper plates like it was a game. At minute 22, she showed him something on her phone and leaned in so close her hair fell over his shoulder. At minute 36, they both went silent, staring into each other's eyes like the world around them didn't matter. That was the one that broke me. I didn't storm inside. I didn't confront. I didn't even cry. I simply turned the key and drove away, unnoticed, invisible like always. But something had changed. My silence wasn't survival anymore. It was strategy. That evening, Elora walked into our apartment like she hadn't just sold our marriage for a 37-minute coffee date. She hung her coat, gave me a peck on the cheek, and said, "You should have come with us." Lainey said hi. I nodded and asked how the latte was. She blinked, then smiled. "Cinnamon oat milk. My favorite." Lie. The cafe they went to didn't serve oat milk. I checked. That night, I sat on the couch while she showered. Her phone lit up 3 times on the kitchen counter. Vaughn. The name didn't show, just a string of half previews. Still thinking about. Your laugh is. Can't wait on. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. I already knew enough. I already had everything I needed. What I was waiting for was the moment to show her I wasn't asleep anymore. That moment came 3 days later. Her birthday. She planned her own dinner, always did. She liked controlling the details, the menu, the seating chart, even the lighting. Mood matters, she used to say. It was at a local wine bar, private room, 20 guests. Friends, coworkers, a few people I didn't even recognize. She wore emerald green, bold lipstick, and the necklace I gave her for our 3rd anniversary, the one she claimed to have lost years ago. She seated Vaughn directly across from her. I saw the wink. So did 2 others. It didn't matter anymore. I wasn't there to protect our reputation. I wasn't there to pretend. I was there to give her what she thought she'd never get from me, clarity. Toward the end of the night, after the cake had been cut and the mood was peaking, I raised my glass. To Elora, I began. You're the brightest person I've ever known. You light up every room. You make people feel like they matter. That's your gift. She smiled. Everyone smiled. I smiled too. But lately, I continued, I've been thinking about stories. About how we present ourselves. How we edit. How we omit. And I realized that sometimes, the story we tell others isn't the one we live behind closed doors. Her smile faltered. I used to think love was about endurance. About showing up. About staying even when it hurt. But love without respect is just performance. A few heads tilted. Someone cleared their throat. Vaughn stared at his plate. Elora, I've loved you for 9 years. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being your partner and became your stage prop. I took a deep breath, set down my glass. But tonight, I want to give you something you never gave me, honesty. Then I reached into my jacket and pulled out the envelope. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked it over to her, placed it next to her wine glass, and whispered, "You'll understand when you read it." Inside was a printed transcript of the burner phone messages. Dates, times, screenshots. I didn't stay to watch her read it. I left, walked straight through that wine bar and out into the street where the air was cold and sharp and honest. I got into the cab I had called 30 minutes earlier and went to the apartment I'd secretly been renting for 2 weeks. When my phone buzzed 20 minutes later, I didn't check it. I just stared out the window and let myself breathe. For the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom, not happiness, not relief, but the quiet before becoming something new. The version of me she never got to meet. The next morning, the silence in my new apartment felt different. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't lonely. It was clean, honest. No carefully timed sighs from across the room. No quiet tension hanging between every "good morning" and "where were you last night?" It was just me and the sunrise creeping across unpacked boxes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells inside my own life. My phone had 29 missed messages, 7 voicemails, 2 from Vaughn, 1 smug, 1 frantic. The rest from Alora. They started casual. "Weldon, where are you?" Then escalated. "What the hell is this?" Finally, they broke. "Please, please just talk to me." I didn't answer. That day, I emailed her a document. It wasn't angry or cruel. Just a clean list. Shared account closures, apartment lease termination details, and my signature on the divorce petition. Nothing dramatic. No scenes. Just closure. The kind she never thought I'd be capable of. She wanted me weak. She got me clear. By the end of the week, I was sleeping better than I had in years. I started writing again, not to process pain, but because I had ideas again. Space in my head. Peace. I even ran into an old friend, Bree, at a bookstore. Someone who remembered me before all of this. Someone who looked me in the eyes like I mattered, not like I was background noise to her spotlight. We got coffee. Talked for hours. She told me something I didn't know I needed to hear. You're allowed to outgrow people who stop seeing you. And I had. I finally had. 2 weeks later, Alora sent me one last message. Just 3 words. "You were right." I didn't reply. Some endings don't need an echo. I've since moved into a smaller place with a crooked window that lets in more sun than it should. I spend weekends at flea markets, finding strange old books and laughing with people who know me for me, not the version of someone else sculpted for applause. Some nights I still remember that rooftop party. Her laughter. The sting of her words. The 37 minutes that broke the illusion. But I remember it now like you remember a storm that passed, intense, yes, but behind me. Gone. She humiliated me. She lied. But I got my voice back. And I walked out without yelling, without begging, without breaking. That was the revenge she never expected. I chose peace over her performance. And I finally chose myself.